Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Here sitting at this exact table for probably the next to last time this week? Question mark.
I hope so. I think so. We'll see. How's it going?
Good. Third and final day of Big Ten Media Days. This week is just always such a grind because there's so much stuff, and everyone I'm sure hears me say that, and they're like, "Oh, those boys have been out having fun in Vegas." No, we're having the most video editing week of our lives, but it has been a lot of fun to talk to all these different folks, get some different perspectives on not just, this is always kind of the who's going to win the Big Ten kind of time of year, but it's all this year. There's so much other stuff to talk about that's been really interesting to get some different perspectives on.
Yep. And then so today, the show again begins, if you're watching on Big Ten Network, begins at 2:30 Eastern with the outstanding Kirk Ferentz, new Purdue head coach Barry Odom, Deshaun Foster, the UCLA head coach.
Where's that located?
Los Angeles.
Oh.
Also, USC is located in Los Angeles. Jonathan Smith from Michigan State will follow him, then Lincoln Riley, and then Sherrone Moore at 3:45 today.
It's very smart to have Lincoln Riley between Jonathan Smith and Sherrone Moore so you don't have an issue in the tunnel.
He's not great at defense. So he might actually be like a gasoline in a fire type of thing. So that's what you guys have for today if you're watching along on the television. And then, of course, Tom and I will be back around 8 p.m. Eastern for Buckeyes tomorrow morning, a live show there. So we'll wrap up what we saw today, heard from the Michigan folks, and maybe just some overall thoughts from the event. But today we're going to be talking about Michigan because this is the Michigan show in terms of the actual third day stuff. Sherrone Moore will be here, of course. Fullback Max Bredesen, linebacker Ernest Hausman, and defensive end Derek Moore. And Tom, my first thought on what I'm looking at this, if the guy you have representing your offense is a fullback / tight end, is that a good sign for your offense, or is this just? I mean, it's not a good sign. Is it a bad sign for the offense because none of the offensive linemen, certainly no quarterback, because they've got a transfer and a true freshman, transfer running back and a sophomore running back, basically. The receivers average 8 yards a catch, so they're not going to be necessarily the guys representing them. Is this a default? But also, Max Bredesen is a very good and hard-nosed player, so maybe he's the best representative of the offense?
Yeah, that may be here's how we view ourselves as a program, and that has been Sherrone Moore as an offensive line guy at heart, obviously, and so I was a little surprised that it wasn't an offensive lineman. But this is also, teams have a little bit of a different approach to who they send here, and sometimes traditionally it has been a reward for the fifth-year senior who's always been such a great warrior for your team and that kind of stuff. That was not the approach that Ohio State took this year. Ohio State brought 3 guys who literally could not check themselves into a hotel because they were not 21 years old yet. But it was kind of 3 of the biggest names, maybe the 3 biggest names on this year's team. Max Bredesen is probably not one of the 3 biggest names on this year's team. Maybe this time next year, Bryce Underwood is the one who's here for representing the Michigan offense, but you're not going to bring a true freshman. I don't know that I've ever seen a true freshman at one of these events. So, I'm hesitant to read too much into it in terms of what it really means for the Michigan offense, more than it's a veteran guy and he's gonna hit all the talking points. You also sort of invite the questions based on who the person is, and the questions you're inviting based on bringing a tight end and fullback here is toughness questions, line of scrimmage questions, establish it, kind of run the damn ball kind of questions. So that's probably part of it as well, because that's what Michigan has built its brand on for decades.
Yeah, and I don't know who else they would bring, frankly, because again, the receivers have really struggled, and Colston Loveland is gone. There's no next tight end, just no established tight end. Marlon Klein played a bunch, but this guy, Max Bredesen, is probably the most obvious. We have seen transfer quarterbacks be the representative, like their first year, like they have not played a game yet, but I'm going to represent the team. So it's interesting that Mikey Keene, who was, I think, banged up in the spring, which hurt.
He was banged up in the spring, didn't really play. I don't think he played at all in the spring game, and I don't know how much he really played during the spring, and I don't know how much I'm really expecting him to play this fall. We'll see. The transfer guy who didn't play in the spring and who may not be your starter is probably not the guy who I'd expect. That is, though, one of the really interesting questions is who's going to start, because this is, in some ways, this is not a one-to-one for reasons that will, potentially become apparent. But 2011, Ohio State, when they had true freshman Braxton Miller and returning starter Joe Bowserman, not returning starter, like returning roster participant Joe Bowserman, you kind of had Braxton Miller as a super elite true freshman, but is he ready to go? And you have the veteran guy there, and there were certainly other things at play during that 2011 season that may or may not apply to this year's Michigan team. But it's a team that it's a situation where you've got some uncertainty around the quarterback position, and my sense with this is we've generally kind of been able to tell what they're probably going to do. And when it was Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy, it was like they want to start JJ McCarthy. They're going to eventually start JJ McCarthy. They might as well just start him right away, and that's where sort of things ended up. I think you might be in that mode here. Maybe you start Mikey Keene to get through week 2 at Oklahoma, to have just a veteran guy and have Underwood kind of coming in to supplement that, maybe. But ultimately, this feels like mid-October, this is Bryce Underwood's team.
Yeah, and I with Michigan's schedule, the road games that they have like every other week, basically, I think leads to a couple of losses. So if they wanted to start off with Mikey Keene and there's some losses in there, it's a very easy transition. And like, well, we're going to make that step and move forward. Terrell Pryor as a true freshman started game 4.
After the USC
started
game,
against Troy. Yeah. It's like that was an established Todd Beckman who took them to the national title game the year before. But in terms of the expectations for Bryce Underwood, if you're going to start him, you could just start him week 1. That way he has a week to prepare, a game to prepare under his belt before Oklahoma. Is the safer step for them to mix him in those first few games until it's his turn, or just let him go? But I guess it also depends on, is he really that good? Like, how good is he? How good is he in this offense? Do these receivers need a more veteran quarterback? Does the offense need a more veteran quarterback with these receivers? Now they did go and get Donovan McCauley, former Indiana quarterback and receiver, who's a big guy, has been a productive receiver, though he transferred out after the 4th game last year because the ball was going to other players, other transfers.
Right. Yeah.
And so he was kind of shut out. And so he's at Michigan now. He's going to give them some size, and you would assume a more consistent target than they had last year. I can be swung either way on what the best course of action is. Do you protect him early on, or do you just ride or die with this guy that you $12 million or whatever?
Yeah.
Do you start getting your investment that first year, that first month?
Yeah, you're trying to strike a balance between so many different things, because this is not a Michigan team that has a incredible offensive line. I think there are concerns at tackle, which can cut one of two different ways. One, you want the guy who's more elusive to be able to, make something happen with his feet if the pocket kind of breaks down. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, do you want the veteran guy who's had to deal with pass rush, the pocket breaking down before, who maybe is a little going to be able to process things a little quicker, just because, that's not a Bryce Underwood specific thing. That's every time you talk to a true freshman and then you talk to them the next year, they say, hey, the game's moving a lot slower for me now. Everything was kind of going a million miles an hour as a true freshman. Now that I have a year under my belt, everything's moving a little slower. Week 1, week 2, things are going a trillion miles an hour in his head. And that's true of every true freshman. That's not specific to him. That was true of Dylan Raiola last year for Nebraska. He finished with 13 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. And we saw Underwood during the spring game, and everyone saw the one play that was the long 90 whatever yard touchdown pass. But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of there with the spring game, and that's just one practice. But I didn't get the sense, listening to Michigan people talk, that was necessarily out of the ordinary either. And it's just, there's going to be a learning curve. Ultimately, you're probably better off trying to work him into a certain degree, not just like throwing him into the fire, because if you throw him into the fire and then he gets hurt because the offensive line is issue, well, then that's really a problem.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is maybe the answer there in terms of why it would be Mikey Keene to start. Assuming, again, we don't know how camp is going to go.
Sure.
This is if it's neck and neck type of thing. Who do you go with? Now, if it's clearly Bryce Underwood or clearly Mikey Keene, then that answer is easy. Mm-hmm. But then there's also, you get past the Oklahoma game, and then those are the two games where Michigan would like to suspend their head coach.
Yes.
For games 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Do you want a true freshman quarterback starting in games where your head coach isn't there to maybe calm him down? But at Ohio State, the head coach gets involved with the quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Sherrone Moore is an offensive line guy, so he's not necessarily going to be as involved. But is that something where maybe the head coach doesn't want a freshman doing this if he's not there?
Yeah. Well, and then the other piece of this is, where does Michigan honestly believe they are in terms of the college football playoff this year? Do they honestly feel that they're a legitimate contender? They're probably going to be ranked in an area in the rankings where, I think, what are they, 4th in the Big Ten prediction, something like that?
Yeah, maybe.
Something along those lines, where you're probably in the college football playoff conversation, but you're not necessarily a prohibitive favorite to make the college football playoff. And internally, this is a time of year when there's lots of optimistic talk. Internally, where do they really think they are? And when they look at their schedule, do they think they're going to be able to go? So they're 5th. So behind Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Illinois.
But they did have a first place vote.
They did have a first place vote. Yes. Can I guess which beat that vote came from? It is. You're going to approach this season 2 different ways. One, if you feel this is a team that by the end of the season could be make a run in the college football playoff kind of team, which, as you see a true freshman quarterback grow over the course of the year, you could be. But then also, with the way the schedule lays out, do you have time to sort of let him work through some of those bumps and bruises and learning curve? This is kind of, to me, a little bit the Cade McNamara versus J.J. McCarthy conversation, where Michigan's not winning the national championship this year, but maybe you just sort of ride it out with Bryce Underwood as much as you can. Maybe that's not week 1, week 2, but you ride it out with him as much as you can. Take your bumps and bruises, accept that, a true freshman quarterback is going to lose you a game at some point. But you go through the schedule at Oklahoma, at Nebraska, home for Wisconsin, at USC, home for Washington, at Michigan State. Then they've got Purdue, and then you get into November, and gotta scroll down here, at Northwestern, at Maryland, and Ohio State. I mean, you've got none of those games are unwinnable games, really. There's lots of those teams have questions. But none of those games are, you're going to beat Purdue at home, yes. You're probably going to beat Northwestern at Wrigley Field. You're probably going to win at Maryland. But there's, you could lose to Wisconsin at home. I don't think you're going to, but you could. You could lose at USC. You could lose to Washington this year. I mean, you're playing a lot of kind of like middle of the Big Ten teams. You could lose at Nebraska, absolutely. So this is you're going to have, you've got your gimmies non-conference. You've got a couple in conference that you're going to win. But that looks to me like you got 5 games you're going to win, another, and then 7 that you are somewhere between could win to likely to win, but not guaranteed to win.
Well, I see just the first 4 games as an opportunity for Michigan to go 2-2 and then have the off week and then start Bryce Underwood, and get him going. And that's kind of what I'm expecting to see, where you've got Michigan loses at Oklahoma. They win it. They obviously beat Central Michigan, and then they lose at Nebraska. I mean, that's not an easy road trip. And then it's like, okay, well, we've got a week off. Let's get the freshman quarterback in there. Let's just move on and make the next step. And I think that if I were to throw some money down, that's kind of how I see it going for them. Now, if any of those quarterbacks win any of those road games, and that's also a good answer for Michigan, because I think they've found something there.
Yeah, and I would probably take the over on 2 wins in the first 4 games there. But there are a couple losable games. You're not losing all of your losable games unless you're Scott Frost era Nebraska, and you're not winning all of your losable games for the most part. You're going to fall somewhere in the middle there. And, this is the time of year when you can look at anyone's schedule and go, yeah, they could go anywhere between 13-0 and 5-7. And, the truth is generally going to fall somewhere in between. And, this is also the time of year when if you poll fans from every team within Big Ten play, the Big Ten is going to go 47 games above 500 because everyone's going 9-3 or better this year. So we'll see. And there's this is a let's talk about the at Nebraska game. Mm-hmm. If you have a true freshman starter in Bryce Underwood potentially going up against a second year in Dylan Raiola, I don't think Nebraska is going to be amazing this year, but I think Nebraska is going to be better. And Michigan has questions. And I see the folks in the comments talking about, Michigan's quarterback last year. And yeah, they had a bad quarterback situation last year. Mason Graham is not on this year's team. Kenneth Grant is not on this year's team. And yeah, I know they've got other guys there. I know they like Rayshon Benny in the middle of the defensive line. The offensive line has questions. I mean, they have new running backs, and I know they like Jordan Marshall, and I know they like Justice Haynes, but you don't have Colston Loveland this year. There's a lot of turnover, and this is the time of year that everyone wants to talk with great certainty. I don't have a total grasp on what Ohio State's going to be this year. Yeah. I don't have a total grasp on what Michigan's going to be this year. This is the time of year where, Oregon this year, like there's questions about Oregon, but they're replacing a bunch of guys. Penn State's the team that I feel like you have the most certainty about among kind of that top tier of the Big Ten, and Illinois might be the second behind that in terms of the margin. The error bars there, or the margin for errors, is not quite as big on them. But Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, I think those are all teams that you don't have the huge veteran core returning like Michigan had in 23, Ohio State had in 24. That's Penn State this year, and everyone else. You have hopes, you have dreams, you have thoughts on how this is going to go, but this is the time of year when you can make lots of real certain predictions, and then go back and go, wow, I was way off on that.
Yeah, Michigan beat Ohio State last year without a quarterback. They also lost 4 Big Ten teams to 4 Big Ten games. Mm-hmm. At Washington, Illinois, at Indiana, and of course Oregon at home. So they struggled on the road. And that's kind of what I foresee this year again. And until the Bryce Underwood thing is fully fleshed out and he's got some experience, which he very well could and probably will when Ohio State gets to town. He's not going to be the same quarterback in September that he is in November, as we keep saying. So I think the idea that Michigan loses a couple of games early, it's not out of they did last year. Of course, that was Texas, but I'm interested to see what they are on the road, because I don't expect them to be very explosive. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be as good defensively. They lost some low-scoring games last year.
Yep.
It doesn't. They scored 7 points at Illinois, 17 points at Washington, 17 points at Oregon, 15 points at Indiana. You don't need to give up many points to lose when you're only scoring 10 to 17 points. It can just swing on one play. And on the road, anything can happen. And having 2 road games early on, I think, is not good news for them. And if they come out of it, then great. And then they can take a rest. And then, their schedule is interesting just because it's a home game, it's a road game, it's a home game, it's a road game. But once they get through this, get past Michigan State, and again, I think Michigan State, they better watch out for that one, because that's rivalry on the road.
Yep.
And I know that Michigan fans are going crazy right now, probably with me. Like, just beware, Michigan.
Right.
You might have some tough games. Like Ohio State schedule, we're telling people, watch out. You've got at Washington, at Illinois, at Wisconsin, at Michigan. Like these are all scary games that can go either way on any given day. So if I'm saying like Northwestern, at Maryland, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
For Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, but there are some legitimate concerns. USC should have got them last year in Ann Arbor, and I think this is is this a better Michigan team this year?
It's a different Michigan team this year. We don't really know. We don't really know. It's a Michigan team that's going to be better at the end of the year than they were in the middle of the year last year. Because I do think, assuming Bryce Underwood stays healthy, you're going to see at least more dynamic play from the quarterback position. There are going to be pros and cons. There are going to be throws that he will make this year that will make everyone pull the hair out, and there will be plays that he makes with his legs. I go back to like the Terrell Pryor freshman year at Ohio State, where same thing, top 5-star quarterback, a little bit raw, and Underwood's probably a better passer than Pryor was. Pryor was probably a little bit more dynamic with his legs than Underwood was. But you're gonna, that was an Ohio State team that was not loaded at wide receiver by any means, and had, some questions I think on the offensive line, and had probably, I think I'd take Beanie Wells over Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes. So you've got, it's not a dissimilar situation, and I remember that Terrell Pryor 2008 season where he threw 4 touchdowns against Troy. And it was like, wow, you look at those stats, that's amazing. And his first career start, and it was like, boy, that was not a good game. And they had they lose to Penn State that year, 13-6 or something like that. And he had a fumble. They got run back, I think, for a touchdown. That was a real backbreaker for Ohio State. It's a freshman quarterback. He's going to make mistakes. You've seen this over the years. This is not specific to Bryce Underwood. This is just, it's a freshman quarterback. I think Michigan has built itself around the trenches for so long, and they have good pieces in the trenches, but I don't know that they're going to be quite as strong in the trenches. I don't know the offensive line's going to be quite as good this year. The defensive line, you lost a top 5 pick in Mason Graham. That's not an easy thing to replace. And like I said, I know they've got Rayshon Benny and who's the other defensive tackle? I'm blanking.
Well, they also brought in.
They brought in the transfer, right?
Yeah.
But I'm blanking on his name right now. Derek Moore is a heck of a player off the edge, but you do still have questions there. This is not a fully formed 2023. Look at all the veteran guys we've got back coming off of a college football playoff run kind of team. They have questions, and so I'm going to say they're going to be better than they were most of 2024. But I also think that the people who are just doing the disco stew, if these trends continue for beating Ohio State and beating Alabama, they'll be beating the Chicago Bears by week 3. And then, is it time to take on God himself by midseason? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. That's not really how this works. I think they're going to be probably better than they were. For the bulk of the season, I think it'd be better than they were last season, but they lost every road game they played before Thanksgiving last year. So, yeah, they'll be better than that.
You think? No, they should. You mentioned Dylan Raiola, or the freshman quarterback, costing you a game at some point. Dylan Raiola, was it the Illinois game where he threw 3 touchdowns, but at the end he made some bad plays on a drive to tie the game, and it's just you never know when that's going to happen. And so regarding Dylan Raiola, if I say he threw for 2,819 yards last year, if that's the over-under for Bryce Underwood, 2,800 yards, because that was a true freshman last year for Nebraska, 13 games. He started every game.
How many yards did J.J. McCarthy throw for in various seasons?
Probably not. Well, all right.
I think this is a Michigan team that is still going to be a run heavy. I'll take the under on 2,800 yards for
sure.
for him. This is still a Michigan team whose identity is based on winning in the trenches. If you have a former offensive line guy as your head coach, your identity is going to be based on winning in the trenches. And that has worked for them. That has worked for them for decades. That's Sherrone Moore's identity. That's the program's identity. That is, they are going to be a run-first team. Yeah, J.J. McCarthy in 2023, 2,991 yards, and that was in 15 games. So, and that was not a season where he split.
Right.
He was. So, yeah, I will definitely take the under on that. If you look at Dylan Raiola's numbers on the whole last year, I think I'll take 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, right? Was the number. So I'll take the under on interceptions for sure. I'll take the over on touchdowns, but I'll definitely take the under on yardage. I think he's going to, I think Bryce Underwood's going to make some exciting plays. He's going to have the no yes plays. You'll have a few of those, but you're also going to have the no plays sometimes too, because that's what a talented true freshman quarterback is.
I wonder about the completion percentage. Dylan Raiola is 67.1.
Under.
Well, I mean, Michigan throws a lot of short passes because that's what their receivers
that's true.
can handle. But 67% is. It used to be really good. Now it's like, well, I mean, that's kind of the baseline. That's where, because all of the screen game and the short passes and the pass happy offenses. But I'm with you, under on yards, just because even if he started every game, they are they are what they are offensively, and I don't expect them to start cranking it up until they get more skill around him, and then maybe they can. But
I got to say, I'm just watching the comments, and the Ohio State fans and Michigan fans absolutely going at it in the comments, and the phrase "nature is healing" keeps coming to mind. It's just how I know college football season is right around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, although Ohio State, Michigan fans in the comments, that's like a year-round crop. Like you can, it just grows.
Yeah, that's your cover crop over the winter. Yeah. And just I absolutely love this. I have to punch this up. Franklin Fanatic, we are 2026 national champions. God bless James Franklin. The Penn State fan logging on. You know what? I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it.
Let us super chat you.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And we spent a ton of time talking about Penn State. I saw people saying we're obsessed that we're talking about Michigan today. Like, yeah, it's Michigan Day, Big Ten Media Days. We're at Big Ten Media Days. Like, when it was Penn State Day yesterday, you'll never guess who we talked about all day. Yeah. So, yeah, that is how the conference has set things up. So, yeah, that's the topic of the day. The topic du jour. I'll take that. That sounds good.
So, just be kind to each other when you're insulting each other. Just do it in a nice way with a smiley emoji after you tell somebody to go, jump off a cliff.
So yes, Antoine doing a great job using the laughing emoji. So good. Well, glad to have you guys slugging it out in the comments. Something that I'm sure will calm everyone else down, Tony. One of the topics that I'm sure is going to come up today, I don't know how much it's going to be addressed today, is the question of NCAA sanctions for Michigan. There's been a lot of, someone asked, I think at one point, what are the odds the NCAA drops the sanctions like 15 minutes before Sherrone Moore gets in the podium? Close to zero is, I think, the answer to that, because that's a 60 to 90 day process. So that's more of an August thing, almost certainly, rather than a July thing, like August 7th or something like that is 60 days, give or take. So I'm not expecting that. I'm also not expecting I'm expecting Sherrone Moore to get asked about it in various ways. I'm not expecting Sherrone Moore to address it in any real detail.
Tom, I cannot comment on an ongoing NCAA investigation, so you can ask the questions if you want. I can't say anything about them other than I'm innocent.
Well, I would be interested in his thoughts, and I bet he probably could talk about his thoughts on Tony Petitti writing a letter supporting Michigan. That might be something he's able/willing to discuss. Maybe,
yeah.
That is on the spectrum of possible things that are going to get you a I can't talk about that smile. The Cam Newton. Is it, as they say, it's an ongoing investigation smile gif. You're going to get that on a lot of stuff. You might be able to get him. I mean, Petitti has talked about it. Obviously, it got leaked to Dan Wetzel, so Michigan is in favor of this being topic of conversation. So that might be something you might be able to get an answer on.
Then I would be like, so you can talk about an ongoing investigation.
Now that everything has changed, yes. and I know everyone in our comments is going to say, ask about this, ask about that. And you can, the way these events work is it's a big group of people standing around and you have something you want to ask about. And it's like, well, you ask about that. Well, he's not going to answer that. It doesn't matter. I just want to see him look uncomfortable. Like, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to get information. Like, I can tell you the information is that he's not going to answer that question.
Right,
so we're better off asking about Mikey Keene or Bryce Underwood or the offensive line situation or, where they are stand at tight end with Colston Loveland gone. I mean, you're better off asking questions like that.
It is interesting because that's the information I want to hear from him, because those are the questions that I have. Because I know he's not.
Yeah.
His power regarding the NCAA is he has none. Like that. That's all. He's just waiting like the rest of us to find out what's going to happen. I would like to have questions answered about his football team at this point.
Yeah, right. That's what the main topic of conversation for this is going to be. And there will be time to have those conversations. I see people like definitively saying like they're done. They're not going to get any more punishments. Like it feels like if that was true, Michigan wouldn't be contesting things and floating stories about and there are folks out there who can't wait to tell you that they have all sorts of secret sources on the committee on infractions and that they know exactly what's going to come.
I'm on the committee.
Oh, well, big if.
I can't talk about it though.
Oh, no, it's too bad.
Don't ask if I'm on it again.
Remind me to talk to you about that after we're done. And they want to tell you that they know exactly what's coming. And we are not in that group of people, and we're not. I think we have been pretty consistently in the camp of it's going to be more than nothing, and it's going to be less than the end of the entirety of Washtenaw County, Michigan. Like it's going to fall somewhere in the middle there. We'll see where it falls. The Tony Petitti letter, we've talked about this before, but the Tony Petitti letter, there's people were looking at that and going, aha, this is so now one of the most powerful men in football says that nothing more should happen. There's a similar headline about Jim Delaney sending a letter to the NCAA in 2011 for the Tatgate Ohio State investigation, like almost word for word verbatim headline, and you saw how much good that did. So this is just sort of like, this is what you do. This is when you were in this position, you send, you get a gift for your wedding, you send a thank you note. A team in your conference gets in trouble with the NCAA, you send a please sir, they're so kind, please be gentle.
Well, this is a stop while you're ahead type of thing where if they weren't going to get anything else, they wouldn't be taking this to a committee on infractions. Like the NCAA is going to tell Michigan, you're fine, we're not going to do anything else. And Michigan's like, I want to argue this. I want to take this to the committee on infractions. Like, no, stop while you're ahead. So clearly that's not the situation.
Right, yeah.
And if they're already on probation for what were lesser things, to think that they're not going to, and we talked about this on the previous show, like it's crazy. It's ludicrous to think that there's not going to be further NCAA penalties for what this was and what happened under Jim Harbaugh's watch. And suspending Sherrone Moore 2 games has nothing to do with what was going on with Michigan. That's a deleting text thing. That's a Michigan thing. Now, the NCAA may do what they want to do with him, but there's still more coming. Like, there's no way that the NCAA is going to be like, yeah, no, we're good. You made a solid argument. We were completely wrong every step of the way.
Yeah.
Our apologies. We will revoke the previous probation just because we feel bad.
Yeah, and I don't have any real strong sense for will this be some kind of a backwards facing thing in terms of vacating wins, in terms of vacating titles, in terms of whatever? Is this going to be a forward facing thing in terms of, hey, you have a postseason, you see people making extremely confident ideas that, I know exactly what's going to happen, and here's exactly, citing this precedent. It's like, there's not a case that's direct precedent for this. Sometimes you can look at NCAA case law and go, in this case, this person did this thing, and they played an ineligible player, and that's what this, there was this violation, the player's ineligible, and so this is what happened. There's not a direct precedent here for that. So that's why I feel like, saying I know exactly what it's going to be is probably not a smart way to approach this, because I don't think you really do. But this is also one of those things where, I think this is like, we've done the coverall and bingo. Like, everyone has someone somewhere has postulated whatever exactly the punishment is going to be,
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
the exact combination of things. And it's like, oh, look, obviously I knew it the whole time. It's like, well, yeah, okay. You tweeted 47 things and you deleted 46 of them, and congratulations. Like, it's like the people who are like Super Bowl rigged because they tweet 7,000 different combinations of scores and then delete them all. And they're like, oh, see, I knew 10 days ago.
I saw somebody ask if Connor Stallions was going to be here. I don't believe so, but he may have gotten credentialed through Fox, through Barstool Sports, so I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying he's got a couple of, like, 1 degree of separation from getting credentialed from this place because of Fox.
With as much as, I guess, okay, let's frame this way.
Sure.
Which does he love more, the University of Michigan's football program or attention? Because I know
Michigan.
Okay, well then, what do you think Michigan wants him to do? How close would how close would they like him to be to this event, to turn this into a circus a matter of weeks before the Committee on Infractions releases a?
You make a fair point, because he has spoken out, and clearly Michigan would not like him to do that. So, but he is. If he wanted attention more than he loved Michigan, then maybe we would hear him talking more, but he sure seems to like attention. But no, I don't expect him to be here. I do think I know he loves Michigan. Mm-hmm. I think he may love Michigan. Well, Tom, if you have a manifesto, mm-hmm. like, that's kind of an emotional connection to, and granted, his manifesto is on, like, the way he sees football in the world, but he applied it to Michigan. So he basically gave Michigan his baby. Mm-hmm. Like, he loves Michigan. I think he's a selfless guy, a good guy. Please stop me.
No, I couldn't if I tried.
He's not going to be here.
No, yeah, he's not going to be here. If he is, boy, that would make for some fascinating.
Now, I did see some guy in Central Michigan polo.
Sunglasses inside was a weird choice, but I don't know.
Las Vegas.
Yeah. So that's that. So I'm not expecting a lot of answers on that today, which is fine. I did not come out here with the expectation of that. Like, someone will ask, it won't be answered, and everyone will move on with life until 2 to 4 weeks from now when there's an actual answer. So, and then
will he talk? Like, it'll be interesting to see what he says when he can finally talk about it, or will he just like, well, that's in the past. Now I'm not talking about the past.
Oh, 100%. That will be it'll just be this is what they said, and we don't like it, we don't agree with it, but it is, and now we got to move forward.
Yeah.
And so, and you're also going to have the folks who were absolutely insistent that you couldn't have a rush to judgment 2 years ago, and you had to take time and let the process play out. They're the exact same people who are going to be telling you that whatever it is unfair because it punishes players who had nothing to do with anything. And so, this is old news, like, and that's one of those. Go back and find the show 2 years ago where we're saying you have to pick one. You can't say you can't punish us now and you can't punish us later if there's findings of violations. You got to pick one, and you can't punish us now was so okay, like, that's fine. So now you let the process play out, and the result is going to be whatever the result is, but that is to come in a month or so.
Are there any questions?
There's been a lot of very definitive statements in the comments. A lot of very definitive statements. There is
a lot of emojis and exclamation points.
A lot of emojis, yeah. And here's one from Sir Eric M. The argument isn't Michigan shouldn't get punished because they did nothing wrong, but they won't be punished because too many people will lose money. And that's a follow the money is a long-time rule in journalism, whether in political or in college football. And follow the money has been a decent barometer for, okay, what is going to change in the sport over the years. You've seen a lot of changes that were not necessarily driven by tradition or geographic convenience or any of that, but driven by TV. And so I do understand that argument. I don't know how much I don't think that changes what the TV ratings for this year's Ohio State-Michigan game are. If, hypothetically, and I'm not predicting this, hypothetically, Michigan gets a postseason ban this year, or 2-year ban, or whatever it is. And so Michigan's ineligible for the college football playoff. I don't think that changes the view numbers on the Ohio State-Michigan game by one person this year versus, if Michigan is 10-2 or Michigan with, 9-2 or 10-1, whatever it is, entering that game, and they're eligible or they're not eligible. I don't think that changes the viewing numbers whatsoever, because it's just that game draws incredible numbers every single year. One of, if not the highest rated regular season game every single year. Ohio State's probably not going to be exactly what they were last year, but they should, they're in that probably top 5, 10-ish conversation. They're certainly going to be in the college football playoff conversation, entering that game one way or the other. Michigan's probably in that conversation one way or the other, but just, if Michigan is not eligible this year for whatever reason, then that's a conversation. Like the 2023, when Jim Harbaugh wasn't there, that almost brought more attention to that game. So I don't think, and this is not a league where they have one good team and it's Michigan, and if they're not eligible, then you're going to have to take a completely unqualified team. The Big Ten's going to get 4 teams in this year, probably, some combination of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, Indiana, Illinois, like whatever. Like there are going to be other quality eligible teams that'll get in this year. So, I don't know that this is like, well, definitely nothing's going to happen because, Gus Johnson's going to call the NCAA and say, listen, we need viewers.
Well, I think it also depends on how good are both teams in terms of the ratings. I was just looking up the 2012 Michigan Ohio State game, which was actually second that week behind Notre Dame USC, which was Notre Dame USC was the prime time, and of course, Ohio State Michigan is the 12 noon on ABC. 9.5 million for the Michigan game, 16.1 for the Notre Dame USC. And that
was not a good Michigan team, though.
Right. And Notre Dame 2012, they played for the national title, and that was at USC. So that's where, again, if Michigan is on probation and they don't have and they have a postseason ban and they come into that game 7-4, like I don't know if it's going to win the week. We'll see, but if both teams are 12 or 11-0 and one team doesn't have a postseason hope, I don't know that necessarily impacts anything, because you're still going to want to see, like, is Ohio State going to get upset and lose finally, or get knocked out of the playoffs or whatever. But I also, like, the playoffs were fine last year without Michigan. The playoffs are fine without Ohio State. The playoffs are always going to be the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. There's plenty of big brands, and you're almost. I think what we saw, Ohio State and Notre Dame had big, have enormous, maybe the 2 biggest fan bases in the country, but you didn't have the record-breaking view numbers for that national championship game because it was not a Big Ten versus SEC kind of thing where you sort of draw in the 2 different regions. I do also think that the gap between when most teams are done with their college football seasons and when people sort of think about, okay, the college football season goes this long and then then there's another week after that.
Yeah.
I do think that, I saw Michigan fans basically saying, like, oh, no one even cares about this. No one even knows this is going on. I can tell you, when Michigan was in the national championship game, I think a lot of people in Columbus felt that way, but other people as well, where it's not just we're not paying attention because it's our rivals. It's you're used to the college football season being done, and your team is in off-season mode, so it's like, oh, right, that's still going on. I don't know how you solve that problem without moving the season up a couple weeks or a week or 2. But
I think somebody here yesterday may have had that suggestion.
Yeah, and I've seen that before. That I think is maybe where you have more of an issue. But also, what is the most college football day of the year? It's New Year's Day, and having the one quarterfinal game on New Year's Eve, and then a day full of fantastic, super important, do or die college football games. That was, we didn't get it this year because of the tragedy of the Sugar Bowl. But if you get that, where you have the one New Year's Eve game and then you have boom, boom, boom on New Year's Day, that I think is going to do really, really good TV numbers.
I always get excited when you look at the possibilities of just not that we get to watch them.
Mhm.
We just get to watch one basically, but the day full of playoffs and talking to the coaches yesterday about the possibility of play-in games.
Mhm.
Like Luke Fickell, like, if you ever want to see a coach happy, go watch. I didn't have any of the videos, but like when they're talking about Luke Fickell, Jed Fish, PJ Fleck, David Braun talking about the possibility of play-in games, and Luke Fickell called it the wild card weekend. He's like, yes, give that to me. Give everybody, most teams in the Big Ten, a hope of the playoffs through November. And I think the things that we talked about with New Year's Day and looking forward to that, I think the play-in weekend would become such a huge thing. It's like the AFC NFC Championship game weekend, where it will become one of those big things.
Yeah, and that's the thing that has kind of changed my view a little bit on the 4-4, 2-2, 1-1, or 1-3, or whatever the combination of numbers is. That you end up with more teams having a meaningful chance at the national championship, like a direct path to the national championship going into November. It's more meaningful games on conference championship weekend. It's more meaningful games in the weeks leading up to conference championship game weekend. And, I've seen a lot of people say, look, the argument against it is, well, Iowa was, 2 years ago, Iowa would have been in the sixth place game, and Iowa was 8-4, and they didn't beat a team better than the 7-5 Minnesota team all year. And it's like, do they deserve a chance at the national championship? Well, what are the odds that they're going to run the table and win the national championship? I mean, like, and was it 2 years ago that Ole Miss was the lowest seed in the college football, in the college World Series, or in the NCAA tournament? Like, they got like the last team in the field and they won the college World Series. Like, was that a terrible outcome? Did that, ruin college baseball? No, but you're also, Iowa's not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very easy, sort of straw man to pick at.
Yeah.
But, was South Carolina going to win the national championship last year if they got in? No, of course not. But that was not a thing that kept people from lobbying for South Carolina. In fact, many of the same people who are now making the argument about Iowa.
Yeah, Boise State wasn't going to win it, but there was a place for them. The playing and the coaches wanting this and having that opportunity also helps with the recruiting and all of that. I'm interested to see if at some point Greg Sankey's like, yeah, okay. Like, has this all been posturing, this 5+11? Because the other thing is the coaches, all of them are saying, settle it on the field, which there's the irony of we want automatic qualifiers, but we also want to settle it on the field.
Yeah.
It's like the automatic qualifying allows things to be settled on the field because they're tired of basically giving way to the committee on all of these things. And so, yes, if you have the 3 versus 6 and the 4 versus 5, that 6th seed is oftentimes in the Big Ten going to have 3 losses, maybe even 4 conference losses. I was looking. There's several years, but that's also a product of playing 9 conference games. You're not going to find that in the SEC where they only play 8, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to probably have the number 6 seed have 4 losses because there's fewer losses in the conference because there are fewer games. And that's another thing. I think it was Jed Fish talking about the fact that there's uneven things. Basically, they want everything to be uniform. But if it's not going to be uniform, then they definitely want to have these play-in games so that they're not leaving stuff up to the committee because the resumes in the SEC will look prettier because they have one fewer tough game, whereas the resume, the beauty pageant of the Big Ten is, boy, you got a lot of bruises. You kind of, you got this. Your hair's all mussed up. And then in terms of the Big Ten coaches getting guff for not wanting to play, like if I don't have to play a 10th Power 4 team in non-conference, like if I don't have to play a Power 4 team in non-conference, then I don't want to do it. And people are like on Twitter, like, you cowards. Meanwhile, there are only 3 of the 16 SEC teams that play 10 Power 4 conference teams, and 12 of the 18 Big Ten teams play 10 Power 4 conference games. So the SEC, I think it's Alabama, it's Georgia, and South Carolina are the only 3 teams this year playing. No, not Georgia, because they only have Georgia Tech, and then they have the softest schedule you've ever seen outside of that. So South Carolina, Alabama, and one other team, and Florida, because they play Miami and Florida State. So that's it. Those 3 teams are the only teams that do what 67% of the Big Ten does.
And, you make some interesting points there. However, how many SEC teams play at least 8 SEC teams versus how many non-SEC teams do? Because I think the answer to that is 0. So all and 0. So checkmate.
You know how I was on the committee on infractions? You are on the selection committee, aren't you?
Hypothetically, Tony, I think the SEC would go undefeated in SEC play if only the officials let them do it.
I can't argue with that because, as we know, they have never lost a hypothetical game other than to an SEC team. Yeah. And then even then, you're not supposed to talk about it.
Right. Yeah. And one of the interesting points that was made this week was you hear 9 conference game versus 8, and you think, well, yes, everyone has, there's going to be 9 more losses in the conference. So that means that Ohio State has one more chance to lose to a Big Ten team. Oregon has one more chance to lose to Michigan, Penn State, Illinois, Indiana, whoever it is. You are going to have one more chance to play and lose to a Big Ten team. That's all true. The secondary impact there that I think people don't necessarily think about is when you're looking at your resume, every team you play, like half of them is going to have another loss. So if your win over the 3rd place Big Ten team under an 8-game schedule might be a team that had a 7-1 non-conference or conference record under an 8-game thing, might be a 7-2 non-conference record. And then it's like, well, how good can they be? They're with the way the committee looks at it, they generally will kind of start their ranking by number of losses. So the unbeaten teams have to be at the top because they're unbeaten, and then you get the number 1 teams and the 1-loss teams, and then you get the 2-loss teams. Go back and look through the history of the college football playoff committee. It's the order of teams will change, but generally you don't have a lot of 2-loss teams above unbeaten teams, outside of the power, within the power conferences. So then your resume is going to be slightly worse because these teams are someone has to take the loss. So it's going to hurt you directly, but it's also going to hurt you indirectly. And like, people have figured this out. This is not a big, controversial thing. Like, all the Big Ten coaches have been talking about this year, and it's just like, it's math. This is how this works. You are going to have one more loss. And then, the SEC side of this has generally been, well, yeah, but I mean, your 9th game is Purdue. Everyone's 9th game is Purdue, Tony. Yep. It's like, oh, congratulations, you're playing Purdue. Oh, very big. Like, someone's 9th game is Ohio State. Someone's 9th game is Penn State. Someone's 9th game is Michigan. Like, this is not everyone gets to play Purdue. Yep. Just like not everyone gets, if the SEC added a 9th game, not everyone would get to play Vanderbilt or Kentucky. Like, someone's going to play Alabama. Someone's going to play Georgia as that 9th game. And there's just been a very consistent message this week here that whatever the number is, everyone should just be doing the same thing. Like, everyone should play 8 games, or everyone should play 9 games in the conference, and everyone should, everyone should have you have to play 1 power conference team outside of your league. There should just be a standard. And then if you want to adjust for, well, we think that the teams in this league are better, then at least it's an apples to apples comparison before you start that.
Yeah. And from talking to the coaches, Jed Fish was all in favor of playing an SEC team every year, but only if the SEC goes to 9 games and there's automatic bids and play-in games, because otherwise, Ryan Day said it, all of these other coaches have said it, there's no incentive. You're only punishing yourself if you play that 10th Power 4 conference team. And as Curt Cignetti said, like, we're doing the SEC thing. We're going to have 3 non-Power 4 teams in the non-conference and play 9 Power 4 conference teams like the SEC does. And why are we getting flack for that?
Yeah. Well, and that they became a talking point. I don't think that the conversation around Indiana would have been what it was if that hadn't been the Friday night game. That was the first data point anyone had, and we are in the college sports media cakes complex where everyone has to have everyone has to, as soon as the 3 drives of the game are done, everyone has to have an extremely hot take about what it all means about the future of college football. And so Indiana fell behind in that game, and Notre Dame won, and won, comfortably, but not in a blowout. And But it was like, well, they weren't even competitive. Now, 24 hours later, Tennessee got their heads caved in at Ohio State. But by that point, like, well, I mean, is that a broader referendum on the SEC? No, that's different because, if the Ohio State Tennessee game had been Friday night and the Notre Dame Indiana game had been Saturday night, I don't think you would have seen quite the examination of Indiana's non-conference schedule that you did. I mean, it was a topic beforehand, but it was like people had made up their minds about this is exactly what this means, and then here is some data that broadly aligns with what I had said before, so therefore I'm right about everything. And that's why TLDR, that's why the SEC has been the dominant conference in college football the last 2 years, with zero wins over Big Ten teams, current SEC members over current Big Ten teams in the college football playoff in only 4 attempts over the last 2 seasons.
I will also add, Notre Dame beat Indiana by 10 points. Notre Dame beat Georgia by 13 points in the playoffs. Again, different kinds of games.
Yes, but one they were at home, and the other one was a neutral site game much closer to the other school's home. So, it's impossible to compare those two things.
But I know we like to look at final scores, and that's how things are often judged, and that's what we do. And so, again, kudos to the Big Ten. A pox on the SEC.
We have breaking news that I would like to confirm before we talk about it on the show.
Oh no.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh no. I can't say oh no because the Hulksters.
Yes, TMZ
past is not great.
TMZ Sports reporting that Hulk Hogan has passed away at age 71. Tony. I feel like I should yield the floor to you, as I'm sure you were a young Hulkamaniac who was taking his vitamins and saying his prayers.
I don't know if people remember Saturday night's main event back in the 80s, but I remember being like, they should just get rid, because it would like when like Saturday Night Live was on hiatus or whatever. Every few months there'd be a Saturday night's main event, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. They should just get rid of Saturday Night Live. Just every Saturday night at 11:30.
No staying power.
Get rid of these unfunny kids and bring. I want the Hulkster, the Ultimate Warrior, Sergeant Slaughter. So this
is Iron Sheik Erasure.
Iron Sheik. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go into another hour of the show, but
I do just want to take a moment to just reflect on the fact that the people that have been absolutely screaming at each other in the comments for a full hour now. Everyone's on the same page and coming together in this moment of great sadness for our nation.
So it makes America great.
It is what makes America great. We do have a super chat here. I do want to get to from Jordan Kapler before we wrap up. Dumb question, I know, but if you were a college football team's season record, what team and season would you be, and why would Kevin be 2024 Florida State? Well, I don't know. Florida State did win 2 games, and one of them was against a power conference team in Cal. So,
wow. I don't know how to answer this one. This is teed up, but it's like I can't reach the tee. It's like, well, it's too high.
Would you say you can't come up with a good combination of wins and losses for Kevin's? No, I definitely would not. Myself, how about the 2019 LSU? Well,
although maybe give that to Kevin because he's so offensive.
They didn't start. He's definitely a Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch team. I don't know which one, but definitely one of them. Maybe that would be a great question for Lincoln Riley later today. We talk about what questions Sherrone Moore won't answer. Yeah. I'm certain Lincoln Riley would be happy to discuss that in some detail. Anyway, this is Kevin. Which season does he remind you of?
And I will remind you, you are under oath.
So there you go. Thank you guys. Oh no, you need to wrap up the show because we are an hour in, and we do have other work to do, but we have
breakfast,
and we'll get there eventually too.
So we do want to thank you. If you have not hit the thumbs up, we would appreciate that before you go. And we will be back here at 8 p.m. Eastern to recap everything we saw. So thank you all for tuning in. Find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. Y'all have a good day.